me today. Now let's dive into this fascinating subject. Welcome back to Inside Medical Malpractice with neonatologist Dr. Michael Narvey. I feel so lucky to have him here with us today. This is the third time that we've talked. We did a webinar together on neonatal hypoglycemia last month, and we've just finished recording a longer podcast where he talks about his journey into neonatology, his medical legal work, how his medical legal work has altered his practice and his teaching, and offers some great advice to lawyers, healthcare providers, and the public on the most important thing he feels they should know about neonatal litigation. So welcome back, Dr. Narvey.
Pleasure to be here again.
My pleasure too. We're going to go a little bit, take a different direction on this shorter podcast, where I'd like to learn more about you as a guy, as a person. You talked a little bit about in the last podcast that you're a 12-year-old stuck in a man's body, as I think every good man is, honestly. And so let's start with some questions going way back to tell us a little bit about your childhood, your family of origin, and then move into your current and family life.
Okay. I was born and raised in Winnipeg. I have three siblings. I have a younger brother and sister that are twins, and a sister who is 13 years younger than I am, which my sister Alex, in many ways, I think, can be credited to, with why I went into pediatrics. One of the reasons, as my parents were both working when I was younger. And I changed a lot of diapers, made a lot of food for my younger sister before I went off to college. But I'm not sure if I think I may have mentioned this in our podcast before or in the webinar, but I come from a family of a lawyer. My father was a litigator in Winnipeg. And so I grew up with a legally minded father. Mm-hmm. My mother had some work doing in a business that she started up here in Winnipeg, and did that for a few years, but otherwise was a homemaker. I grew up in a nice middle class neighborhood in Winnipeg, and went off to university, and then married during medical school, had two wonderful children who are now 12 and 11 years of age. That marriage did not continue, but we both found happiness with others. And so I've been married almost a year now, and have a house with my two children, my two stepchildren, and my lovely wife. And life is good.
Good. Congratulations. That sounds like a busy life.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, that's good. Just as an aside, will you or have you encouraged any of your children to go into medicine?
More of a listener in that regard. They when they're young, they say different things. And my daughter at one point was saying she wants to be a neonatologist, and I joked that we could have we'd have Narvey and Narvey as a
right?
as a private neonatal group. And my son, who's very tech savvy, thought about doing radiology and probably floating around on a boat somewhere, right. Over satellite phones, or satellite internet, reading films and so forth. But no, I think. I would say I'm not one of those people. Like you'll hear some physicians talk about how horrible medicine is, and they would never tell their children to do that. And to those people, I often say to myself, you'll never hear me complain. And part of the reasons I won't complain about medicine is because I remind people when they tell me that how bad their lives are. I'll say, this didn't happen to you by accident. Like you dreamed of getting into medicine. You wrote exams to get into medicine. You applied to get into medicine. You toured the country going for interviews to get into medicine. You suffered through 4 years of medicine. You then applied to a residency. And you could have done family medicine and done 2 years, but no, you decided you wanted to be a specialist. So you did 5 more years. And then that wasn't enough. You decided to do 2 more years of another subspecialty. So I said, you have no one to blame but yourself.
Right.
So, yeah, I like to remind people of that.
Right. That's a good one. And it was all very intentional, right? It was all by design, all of it.
Yeah.
Pardon me. So it sounds like you have a very, very busy life. What do you do when you're not working?
Well, I think that one of my hobbies, if you can call it a hobby, it's kind of like we talked about in the podcast last time, was it's sort of a blend of academia and social media, because I started back in 2015. I became involved with a Facebook page that I run on allthingsneonatal.com. Then I got involved in Twitter, and my Twitter account, which is at NICU_musings, is really, it's a medical Twitter account. Some people post about what they're having for dinner. I did post my fish that I made once, but for I was quite proud of it, actually.
Yeah.
But
so you should post it.
Yes. But aside from that, no, I'm big into education, and so that takes up some time of the day. I just mentioned I like to go biking, so I do that. We're just in the midst of getting a pool put in, and so I intend on spending a lot of time brushing up on my swimming.
Good.
I've got 2 beautiful dogs that I love taking for walks. It's an interesting question to answer during the pandemic, when we've been really limited in what we can do.
Yeah.
And travel, I think that's a standard answer. But the other thing that I really enjoy is, and have for many years, is wine tasting, and going to wineries, whether it be the Okanagan or Napa or places in Europe. I don't know. It became a hobby. I was inspired by an emergency physician in Edmonton many years ago, and sort of kept it up.
Good. That sounds like a lot of fun, everything. Could you just recap your Facebook and your Twitter pages again for people who are interested in checking them out?
Oh, sure. The Facebook is All Things Neonatal. If you do a search for that, I think it's either All Things Neonatal or All Things Neonatal 2 that'll show up as.
Okay.
And then there's a blog, which is www.allthingsneonatal.com, where I discuss scientific papers, opinions about neonatology. Sometimes I make commentary on Canadian Pediatric Society documents, advertise those. And then Twitter is at NICU_musings.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. That must be a bit of a job to keep all that up to date.
It is, but you know what? It's a fun job, and it's extremely rewarding. Just last week, I'm not going to give away too much, because the person, who knows if they would listen to this, but they're from the UK. And they wrote me a private message on Twitter and talked to me about the loss of a child that they experienced. And I'd been posting some commentary on coping with loss, and how we in the NICU can support, and that it's okay to cry. And this individual reached out and said that he and his wife, like, this really resonated with them and helped them. And I thought to myself, here I am in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada, sitting on my couch, posting these things, and someone a world away is reading this.
Yeah.
And so where my inspiration comes from is, it's wonderful. Don't get me wrong. It's wonderful I'm sitting in the hospital right now in my office. Down the hall are 50 babies. And it's wonderful to be able to walk out of this office and go and talk to a family, but to know that I can help not only these 50 families, but I can help thousands, through that reach. And who knows, who's reading what. That every day, gets me to sit down and do something, because I just never know. You never know what can happen. Yeah. So
the magic of the internet is just amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Who you can reach.
Yeah, and I've been blessed that thus far I've been largely spared by the trolls. Probably,
Yeah, good.
probably because of the content I put out there.
Right.
Not
Who's
of
going to
interest.
argue with you? Like, really?
Well, it's not of interest. But as long as you keep it clean, I think there's a real propensity for help.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I agree. Especially right now. Especially right now. I think that's been one of the, COVID highlights is how interested we all are in health and pharmacy and vaccines and 1,000 different things that were kind of on a back burner
Yeah.
before. So that's really good. And coping with health issues, that's going to be, I think, the next big thing that we're all going to be looking for. So, over the next 10 years, what does your medical practice look like? Do you have any thoughts of slowing down or changing or moving more into something or less into something? What's your next decade look like?
Well, I think the big question mark on the horizon, well, there's a few things that are going to happen. 10 years from now, I don't see myself still as chair of the Fetus and Newborn Committee. Typically, it's a 6-year commitment. And I think I'm 2 years or I'm 2.5 years into this commitment now. So that will be in my rear view mirror. And that'll be strange, I mean, to help shape national guidelines or help shape national approaches to things is quite a wonderful feeling, and so I'm privileged to be working with the CPS, but that will run its course eventually.
Right.
I've been division or section head here for 11 years, and I think that over the next 10 years, that position will change. I think that I'm humble enough to recognize that while I think I'm full of wonderful ideas, sometimes it's nice to have a refresh, and have someone who's invigorated and has new ideas and new strategies. I think that can be very beneficial for an organization. So thinking about it from a systems basis rather than a personal basis, I think that will be a change that I will see. And as far as slowing down goes, I do think those two things in and of themselves, if I was no longer doing those, that would be a huge reduction in my workload. And I think back to a quote from one of my mentors, Paul Byrne, who's a neonatologist in Edmonton. He's, I think, semi-retired, and I hope if he hears this, or somebody hears this who knows him, and he is in fact considering himself semi-retired, he'll be okay with that comment. But Paul said to me, I remember as a fellow in Edmonton, or maybe I was young staff, he talked about how high-level intensive care was a young man's game. Now, I can say young man, women can do it, of course, but he was referring to me as a young man.
Yeah.
It's a young person's game, is the way I would phrase it. And there's some truth to that. I think that you go from a position when you're in your 20s and 30s of approaching call with enthusiasm. What am I going to see tonight? What difference can I make? How can I help? You go from that to you've seen a lot, you've dealt with a lot, and age naturally starts to have an impact. And you don't, I can say for myself, I'm approaching, I'm getting very close to 50 within a year now. And, I can honestly say that the way I respond if I'm woken up at 4 a.m. now is not the way I responded 10 years ago. It used to be I woke up at 4 a.m, I was up, I could round all day, I could do call the next night. Now I'm not ashamed to say I don't, by noon, I'll be saying to my colleague, you know what, are you okay to take over a little early today? I need to go lay down. So no, I think that's, I think that there may be a natural shift towards some lower level intensive care, in the next 10 years, but I also enjoy it. I enjoy I enjoy the interactions as I've shared with you with the families. So, but I think the administrative parts of my life will probably start to decrease.
Yeah. And that sounds okay. I mean, believe it or not, we're all human. And we all age. And it's kind of interesting. We share this. It was exactly at the age of 50 that I made a pretty drastic change in my work for exactly that reason. I don't have the stamina, the interest, the night shifts, the weekends, the holidays, the Christmas, the 12-hour shifts. I've done it and I've done it really, really well. But I don't want to be that nurse at the end of the career that's got the bad hip and the bad back and the bad shoulder and just
No.
waiting, for the end to come.
Yeah.
So it seems to be a really fortuitous time in life. You've got so much knowledge and yet so much opportunity ahead to make some really interesting changes, I think, in your life to just, shift down another road. So good luck with that, whatever that looks
Thank
like in
you.
the next
Thank
couple
you.
of years. A couple of other questions just for interest's sake. Knowing what you know now, what advice would you offer your younger self?
That is a really, really good question. I don't really have, like, people, I mean, another way of asking that question, I suppose, is do you have any regrets? Is there anything you would have done differently?
Right.
There's not a lot in my life I would have done differently. I've talked, I've done some mentoring lessons or sessions with the pediatric residents here at the University of Manitoba over the years. And one of the things I have talked about was how my career was one largely without a lot of intention. You were very complimentary in saying I'm a very busy person and I've accomplished a lot. But, when I look back over my career, because at one point in my life, I found it impossible to say no to people. Like, to give you an example, I was 6 months into being a neonatologist when my then section head said, could you become the program director for the section because the current one doesn't want to do it? And I said, yeah, sure. And then, so I did that for 4 years. And then they said, we're having, I feel like we need a change in the medical director role at one of the hospitals. Would you be willing to take that? Oh, sure. Yeah.
Right.
And I sort of felt along the way that I didn't really have that control, right? And so I think the one piece of advice I'd give, and I'd give this to younger practitioners as well, is, there are going to be so many opportunities that will come your way.
Yeah.
And you don't have to jump at the first one that's offered to you.
Right.
Think about whether it really fits what you want to do. And it's not that I have any serious regrets, but I look back on my career and I say to myself, if you could go back, is this what you really, really wanted to do at that time? Yeah. And the answer probably is no. At those specific times, that's probably not what I wanted to do. Right. But I did them. I learned from them. They were parlayed into my current occupation. So, but I recognized that I didn't have to take them. I felt I had to take them.
Right.
I didn't have to.
Yeah. That's good. I mean, some would argue that saying yes is the path to success, but it can also be the path to jumping in over your head or burnout or just getting stuck in things that you don't necessarily want to do. So,
well, and on that note, I did reach that point. So a turning point for me was about 5-6 years ago. And this is a big lesson I would say everybody should pay attention to. Beware of the once a month meeting commitment.
Right.
Because everyone sells you, oh no, it's not a big job, we're just looking for you to sit on this committee. We meet once a month on Wednesdays at noon. You're like, oh, once a month, Wednesdays at noon, that's fine. And then you get another one, Tuesdays at 4. We only meet once a month, right? And you keep signing up for these things, and all of a sudden you look at your calendar and you go, oh my God,
yeah,
I've got meetings every day.
Yeah.
And about 5 years ago, I actually resigned from a committee that in my heart, I just knew I couldn't pay the attention to it that it needed.
Yeah.
And if I'm not going to do a great job at it,
right,
and it's not a priority in my heart,
right,
let somebody else do it. So that was the first time I'd resigned from anything.
Yeah.
And then since that time, when I've been asked periodically, do I want to take something on? I still often will say yes, but there are times where I've said, it's just not a great time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's good to know. It's good to know that about yourself. And it's better for the committee too, that you're not, that you're not there half-hearted or,
Yeah.
and on a personal level, not dreading the meeting before it happens and rolling your eyes all the way through it and then exhausted when it's over,
Your shoulders
right?
sunk when you realize you've got the meeting today. You're like, oh.
Yeah, exactly. We all know that. Exactly. Okay, on to the next question. What is the one thing that people most often get wrong about you? Tough one.
That's a tough one. You know what I would say, and this is a bit self-deprecating, but, and my best friend would laugh because this was my quote out of my high school yearbook, but I believe it's to be true. I've never considered myself, people will sometimes say how smart I am. Like they'll say, oh, you must be brilliant, or he's a brilliant. I've never seen myself that way. I have worked hard my whole life.
Yeah.
I have seen truly gifted people where, and I'm sure you'll know them or remember them, these people that never studied a day and they got A+ on everything in school. I was the kid that was up, the nerdy kid who was studying and doing math problems over and over again, committing it to memory because I had to work hard at it. And I think that is something that I've actually struggled with throughout life because, when I was in pediatric residency, I was just telling somebody this the other day, I got taught very little, like by my attendings.
Really?
And they often said, there's no point in teaching you because you already know this stuff. And I was too ashamed because I projected it. I worked very hard. So the stuff that I'd read and studied, I knew very well, but there were whole big parts I didn't know.
Sure.
And so I kind of was cast aside. And when somebody's praising you and saying, oh, he's so smart and whatnot, it's kind of humiliating to then say, actually, I don't know how to manage this, And so that's a misconception. I work very hard for what I do know, is what I would say. Doesn't come naturally.
Right. Good to know. And I would say that's, I don't know you well, but knowing you how I do, you come across as very, very well read and very well versed and very confident. But it's good to know, and I think probably true to every single person listening in, that sometimes it's the very confident people who do put in all that work. There's a soft spot inside that is afraid to admit or ask or ashamed to say, I don't actually know this. I know I seem like I'm smart.
Like I should know this, but I don't know this.
Yeah, but I don't know this. So that's really good. And thank you for sharing that. I know 100% that you're not alone in that.
No, and I know I'm not.
Especially in your profession, in high-level professions, for sure. So let me just ask you one more question, a super fun question, and I'm dying to hear the answer. What is your superpower and how do you use it?
Undoubtedly, and you could ask virtually anyone around me what my superpower is. Positivity. Yeah. I mean,
Good
I
one.
see the world through rose-colored glasses to a fault sometimes, I have to say, where the world is crashing around me and I'm still seeing that silver lining in the cloud. But you know what? I think you've touched upon this numerous times already, that it's a busy life, lots of responsibilities, lots of things going on in my home, at work, nationally. And, there are times when things are just, everything, like I said, seems to be crashing, colliding. And I am able to, in spite of all of that, maintain a very positive outlook. And I take that into the workplace. The residents and the fellows sometimes think that I'm crazy when I say this, but what I say to them is, by remaining positive and believing in the patient, even when the patient is clearly headed in the wrong direction, what I say to them is, once you enter that mindset of doom and gloom, helplessness, hopelessness, your approach to patient care, this is my perception, I believe changes.
Yeah.
Do you order blood work as frequently? Do you react as quickly to bad blood gases? Do you react as quickly to changes on the ventilator? When you've already given up hope, I don't think you do. I think you start to let things slide. But when you maintain that, I can do this, we can do this. This team can help this patient. I believe, I often tell the students, the patients feel it. And what I mean by the patients feeling it, I don't think a baby truly feels that I believe in them. But I think what I'm saying to them is the care we provide is better when we believe that the outcome can be good.
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't mean that I've got blinders on when things are truly helpless, or hopeless. I will acknowledge it, but I will go down swinging, as the saying goes, because I believe we owe it to the patient.
Yeah, I agree. And that was a really beautiful thing for you to say there. I've often felt that that's how, as a mother and as a nurse, that's how I've gotten a lot of people through tough things, is I don't see any other alternative except you're going to get through this and you're going to be fine, period.
Yeah.
And I've had many patients, talk to me afterwards and just say, when you looked at me and said that to me, that was my turning point, that I just knew that I was going to be okay and that everything was going to go fine. And I want to tell you something, a personal experience about babies hearing you and rooting for them. You know how I said earlier in the other podcast, like, you've been always focused on the babies and I was always focused on the mother. And literally when the babies were born, I had an experience like 20 years into my career where I saw a tea leaf reader and believe this or not, woo-woo or not, she looked at me and she said, you have a job to do here, Chris. Every single baby that passes through your hands, you need to look them straight in the eye and say, listen, you're here. Now be a good person and live a good life and be good to your parents and listen to your mom and eat your vegetables, whatever was on my mind that day. And that actually changed the course of my nursing a little bit. That gave me I'd seen her at a time when I was a little bit lost in the career and thinking about making a change. I put 20 years into it and I was a little bit tired. But I started doing that with every single baby that came through my hands. And sometimes I had to do it very secretly because the parents would think that was just a freak show and I was a freak. But sometimes if you had a really good relationship with the parents, I would do that right in front of them. I'd say, listen, look, you little kid. In fact, I'd often say, listen, you little shit.
Yeah.
Listen to your parents and be a good person. Grow up and be a big
Not that hard.
It's not that hard, really. Just do it already. But I had this experience just a couple of years ago where I was sitting in a Denny's restaurant having some cheesy egg breakfast. And this little one this 18-month-old came running across the restaurant and climbed up on my lap and buried their face in my neck. And of course, the mother came running right after it too, like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And then she looked at me and she said, Chris,
oh my
it's
goodness.
you. And you had a talk with this kid on the day he was born. I'd never, ever seen them again since that time until he just ran up to me at Denny's. But I just had a little moment of like, I just wonder how much those brand new babies pick up on your attitude and your words in that moment. So don't give up on that. I like your approach and your attitude, but maybe just put a little trigger of belief in there that those babies hear you too, and your positivity and your hope will affect their fight and vigor in the thing too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's a little bit of Oprah for you right there at the end of the podcast. Anyway, with that, I think we'll close. I just want to say thank you again so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks to everyone who listened in, and thank you so much, Dr. Narvey. I hope wherever you are today that it's a lovely day and there's something enjoyable ahead of you. So take good care and thank you for being with us, and goodbye.
Bye-bye.